For centuries, mystics and seekers have spoken of a plane of existence beyond our physical reality, a realm of consciousness known as the Astral Realm. This unseen dimension is said to be the vibrational layer closest to the material universe, a subtle world teeming with entities, thought forms, and the astral projections of living beings. My name is Vesna, and I am an intuitive pranic healer and holistic counselor. For nearly 4 decades, I have dedicated myself to the study and practices of esoteric knowledge, undertaking extensive training and research across various modalities under the guidance of well-known masters. As a healer, my role is to intuitively guide clients towards unlocking their innate healing abilities, empowering them to lead happier and healthier lives. The astral realm is said to operate under a temporal paradigm, vastly different from our conventional understanding of time in the physical world. In this dimension, time is purportedly non-linear, with past, present, and future existing in a fluid, interconnected state rather than a rigid sequence. When a person accesses the astral realm through an out-of-body experience, it is theorized that the time travel becomes possible, as can be seen in our next experience with Dr. Gemma Regan, scientist and parapsychologist.
I've had many out-of-body experiences involved in astral travel. It's something I do very regularly. But I had a really interesting one, which was uninitiated. In 2004, I was in Oahu on holiday with my family, and we went up to the North Island, to the very north point. And there was just somebody down by the side of the road at the beach. It's where the surf beach is. And I was asking if there was anywhere interesting around there to visit, you know. And he told me to go up to a heiau, which is up on the top of the hill, which is rarely visited by tourists. I didn't know anything about it, so I thought, great. Drove up there, and it's a sort of a temple that was there, and there's just some stones around, and there was a little offering table and things. And I didn't even read anything about it. It was called Pu'u Mahuka Heiau, and I thought, I didn't really think anything of it, you know, just being a tourist. It did have a really strange feeling up there, and there was nobody around. And my family's just stayed in the car, and I just thought, I'll just have a little wander around. So I just went and wandered around the stones, and unbeknownst to me, it wasn't something that you should do, but I actually stepped within the threshold. Now, there were no signs anywhere saying don't go there. I didn't think of it because obviously when you visit Roman sites in the UK, you can wander all over them. So I thought it was something similar to that. I didn't think that it had some spiritual significance at the time because I hadn't read anything about it, didn't know what a heiau was, anything. Stepped over the threshold. Immediately, everything changed. It was nighttime. It had been early evening, so it was still light, but it went suddenly dark. It was really, really hot. I was inside the heiau, and I could hear drumming and everything, and I looked around, and there was a ritual going on, a ceremony, and so they were wearing sort of like grass skirts, some were naked, some had masks and headdresses on. I hadn't realized I was in a time slip, and it was really scary, and I was trying to look around, couldn't work out what it is. I could see everything that was happening, and then realized that these people were actually walking through me, so I was like a fly on the wall situation. So then I thought, well, this is interesting, so let's watch. I think I'm safe. And as I say, they were drumming and they were chanting, and there was a man that they dragged to this big stone, and they laid him across this stone. Now, I knew nothing about anything that was supposed to be happening there. They laid him across, and they had a big pointed stone that they were going to kill him. And they were dancing and chanting. And the thing was, I knew what the chant was, and I remembered it. And it was Hali Motemba, Hali Motemba, Hali Motemba, no. And they kept doing it and kept doing it. And I just suddenly thought, are they going to kill this person? You know, and suddenly I got really scared because I thought, if they see me, they're going to kill me as well. And I don't know how long I was there. It felt like at least 10 minutes, but I have no awareness of what it was. It could have been seconds. So suddenly I thought, I need to get out of here, because they were chanting it and chanting it. And it was getting more and more frantic, and the drumming was getting faster and faster. I knew it was leading to like an Indiana Jones experience with it. I suddenly thought, I can get out. And I just walked through the wall. And suddenly there I am back. I'm back in normality. The sun was setting, so it was really low by now. So it must have been at least half an hour, maybe longer. And everything was still normal. My family were over in the car still. And I was just thinking, what's going on? What?
The astral realm is a concept that has been around for centuries. It's a non-physical plane of existence that is energetic or vibrational in nature, and therefore able to be manipulated by thought and intention. Often viewed as a realm of dreams, consciousness, and associated with spiritual exploration, the access of information, or the space to encounter other beings. Skeptics, often aligned with contemporary science, frequently question the existence of the astral realm, viewing it instead as a construct of human imagination, or as part of a dream, an altered state of consciousness, or even a hallucination.
I accept there's an astral realm because I've had experiences where I've interacted with it. Through my shamanic practice, I've made contact with various beings who've given me information that has manifested in this ordinary reality. And there are many other people like me who've had those experiences too. I've also had a near-death experience and out-of-body experiences. So I've actually existed in what people call the astral realm or the spiritual realm. My consciousness has, at least. And it's a mystery as to how that happens, but it does happen. When we make contact with beings that are in the astral realm, we are privy to information that is not ordinarily accessible in our day-to-day reality. Some of that information can be personal to us, and some of it can act as a guiding light for humanity, for our evolution, and for things that are happening on the planet, whether it's for a country or collectively as a worldwide civilization. So it's important to pay attention to that information because it can help us through difficult challenges that occur on the planet and in our own lives.
The astral realm plays a very important role for people on Earth because it's part of our evolution, which involves an expansion of conscious awareness. And the astral realm is a dimension that's right here, right now. People tend to forget this, that all the dimensions are right here, right now, operating in oneness. And how we can access these dimensions is by expanding our consciousness to a deeper level. And this is what evolution in the human kingdom is all about.
I believe that there are at least two worlds, and within those worlds, the physical world, which is our current reality, and the non-physical world. And within the non-physical, or the energy field, or the source field, there are many different realms depending on one's belief systems, depending on what one grew up knowing as to be true. And so it's kind of subjective for me, but for me it's always about the physical world and the non-physical world. So I work with a non-physical stream of consciousness, all that is. And all that is exactly what it sounds like. All that is, I like to say, leaves nothing out. So all that is a conglomeration, so to speak, of all the non-physical energies in all of the non-physical realms, and can show up for me and through me in many, many different ways. I've had experiences with Jesus being present and speaking through me. I've had someone's passed over grandmother speak through me. I've had spiritual masters speak through me and to me. I've had alien beings speak through me and to me. There's just, within the all that is, that there is nothing left out. So anything that's ever been imagined or has ever existed, in fact, what they said to me the very first time we connected was, we are all that is, all that was, and all that ever will be. And so that's what I think of all that is as.
How I connect with the Astral Realm very easily through meditation, either CE5, Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind, or I just sit outside, preferably, or in the morning, preferably at night when it's dark out. I sit quiet, I meditate. Sometimes I'll do it in silence, and I keep my eyes open personally. That's just me. I like to keep them open. Why? So when the craft come, I can see them. If my eyes are closed outside, I can't see them. But when they're open, oh my God, the magic begins.
Cheryl Gottschall posits that the astral realm serves as a vast repository of knowledge. Our ability to access this information hinges on the expansion of our conscious awareness, as noted by Judy Carroll, a process that appears to be part of our ongoing evolution. Certain practices, chief among them meditation, seem to facilitate our connection to this non-physical dimension. We will delve deeper into these techniques later in this documentary.
Astral projection, also known as soul travel, is a phenomenon where an individual's consciousness separates from their physical body and travels to different planes of existence or dimensions. The term astral projection was coined and promoted by 19th century theosophists. But origins of this process date back to 5000 BC and the alchemist called Thoth.
Our next account features Judy Carroll, an accomplished Tai Chi and Reiki master whose works have garnered attention in esoteric circles. Carroll's unique perspective stems from decades of reported conscious interactions with extraterrestrial entities, commonly referred to as the Greys. This encounter, Carroll's experience transcends physical boundaries. She delves into the realm of astral projection, offering a compelling narrative that intertwines her established connection with otherworldly beings and the metaphysical practice of out-of-body exploration.
So 1995, this happened. We went over to the UK for a family reunion, which was just lovely. And one of the things that I wanted to do was visit sacred sites. We actually have a cousin over there who is connected with archaeology. So she arranged for us to go to a sacred site by the name of the Rollright Stones on the border of Warwickshire and Oxfordshire. Anyway, we spent the day there, and I got to stand right in the very centre of the circle, and the caretaker there explained to me about how mist forms in the middle of it, in the side of the circle, first thing in the morning, and you can see that the mist stops where the circle starts. So the energy there was just very, very tangible. Standing in the centre of the circle, I shut my eyes and I could feel myself rocking backwards and forwards. Just amazing. Anyway, came back to Australia and I felt different. I thought first it was jet lag, But it went on and on. And teaching Tai Chi, I was finding myself going into very deep states of meditation, like for normal meditation, but also doing Tai Chi. I just felt the energy was different. Anyway, one night, approximately 3 weeks after we got back, I had a very profound out-of-body experience during the night, in which I was taken out of body in astral form, taken back to the circle at the Rollright Stones, and laid down in the centre of the circle on the bare patch where I'd been standing when I was over there. There was a whole group of little beings around me. At first I thought they were fairy folk, but now I realise they were small greys. And they were holding me down really hard so I couldn't move. And all of a sudden, one of them appeared with a needle about that long, with a massive, absolutely gorgeous blue faceted crystal on the end. And as they held me down, this needle was thrust into my third eye chakra. Of course, the pain was awful, so I was yelling, it's hurting, get it out, which they did, thank goodness. And after that, I blanked out. The next morning, I woke up with a really, really clear memory of this, so clear that I went and checked in the mirror, and sure enough, there was a little sort of art-shaped spot right on my third eye, a little tiny red scar, and I still have a tiny little spot there to this day.
Within the astral realm, a wide variety of entities and beings are thought to exist. These include spirits, nature sprites, ascended masters, extraterrestrials, and a source known as universal consciousness. Additionally, there are astral guides and guardians who aid individuals that explore this realm. Some individuals believe they can connect with their higher selves in this realm that is a representation of a deeper aspect of their own consciousness. Even Carl Jung, the reputed psychiatrist, explored the potential for encountering archetypal figures, symbols, and things from the collective unconscious within the astral realm.
Before a healing session, I call in my guides, and I work with 3 of them. One is an albino American Indian, Native American Indian, another one is a deer, and another one is a being that's come from a realm which I still don't clearly understand. But the 3 of them offer me information. So before I see someone, I will do a journey and ask for their help. When someone comes to see me for a healing session, I'm still working with those guides, and they are giving me direction while I'm drumming or doing some hands-on healing or whatever it is that I'm using for an individual who's come for healing. They're giving me guidance and direction as to what to actually do for them. Sometimes I can ask for them to step into me so that I can access their qualities. For example, a deer is very sensitive and observant. So if I wanted to drill down on something in particular, I can ask deer to step into my energy field and give me borrow, I guess you'd say, those abilities to be able to clearly see what's going on for somebody. And the same with my other guides too. So I can request them to help me and call them in, and which they do.
So in order for me to become one with all that is, or to merge or blend with all that is, in other words, to bring my physical self together with my non-physical aspects in the non-physical realms, when it first started, it really was an exercise in having to sit and breathe and invite in that energy. And over the years, it's become easier and easier. And all I do now is, well, I really don't do anything. There's always a presence within me and around me of the all that is. And oftentimes when I'll be speaking to someone just in a casual conversation, I will find myself using words that I would not normally use. And so I know that there's a reason that those words are coming out the way they are, and that all that is has stepped into the conversation, not in an intrusive way, because I would never allow that. And to be completely honest, I have complete control of this. It's not me being taken over by all that is, as can be explained by other people sometimes. Rather, it is an invitation from me to raise my frequency, raise my energy levels up to, or raise my consciousness up to a level where all that is and I, or my physical self and my non-physical aspects, can come together as one.
And for me personally, I've communicated with several different extraterrestrial races, mostly ones that are here, right here on Earth. They tell me that they're here, they live in the Earth. Yes, there are Pleiadians, Arcturians, there are Greys, there are hundreds of types of beings that are out there, okay, above and beyond. And the ones that I have communicated with, especially the Arcturians, I've communicated with them and I've done healing work. How do I know that? I sat on the beach in Coney Island with my roommate who was open to this, but not super into this. And his back was destroyed. He had surgery and all sorts of things. We were sitting out on the beach meditating. A blue being appeared. We got a picture of it. And then after the session, I went up in the room, we took another photo, and a Christ-like image appeared that we photographed. And then the next day he woke up and he said, bro, my back feels good, man. Way better than it's ever felt. And I've had a few surgeries. What did you do to me? And I said, well, something's going on, you know? You can meditate, open up, and they will, once again, assist in healing. If you are open, you're at a certain vibration. It's like you're at 96 FM on the radio. The ETs, the Ascended Masters, they're at 98 FM. When we meditate, we move from 97 to 96 to 97. They drop down from 98 to 97 when they're aware that we're trying to make contact. Now we all meet at hot 97. We do our healings with contact, with communication. When we meet in the middle, it's all done. They go back to 98. We drop back down to 96. Boom, and the show's over.
The entities inhabiting the astral realm appear to initiate contact with humans for diverse purposes. They may manifest as healers, offering their assistance in therapeutic practices. Some emerge as messengers, imparting wisdom aimed at guiding humanity towards more harmonious endeavors. Others take on the role of spiritual mentors, seemingly intent on elevating our energetic frequencies. And in some instances, these beings act as guides, apparently tasking certain individuals with specific missions. In our next contact experience, we delve into the extraordinary life of Anne Alexson, a modern mystic renowned for her ability as a direct voice channel for an entity known as All That Is. Her narrative features an encounter with the reptilian creature, exemplifying the diverse and often surprising nature of astral interactions.
So what happened was I had a beautiful woman had read an article in a magazine that I'd been featured in and immediately called me because she had a sense that I was going to be able to help her with her healing. She had literally traveled the world trying to be healed from the particular thing that was happening to her and had been happening to her whole life. And she just felt this sense that it was something that I might be able to help her with. And so we organised to meet. I do most of my sessions online, so we connected on Zoom and had an amazing conversation. She told me all about what had been happening to her since she was born. She told me that since the day she was born, she had memories of being a slave to a reptilian. Even as a baby, she recalled being held in the arms of a reptilian, or whatever you would call that. And she'd lived her life with a non-physical chain around her neck, like a dog, essentially, and as a slave to this reptilian. And of course, she'd lived a life where she was totally disempowered in every relationship she was in every situation she was in. She ended up being really disempowered and being treated badly, abused, and all sorts of things. I still don't believe in a reptilian race, but her belief was so strong that I was shown what she'd been experiencing. And the way that that happened is that when I become one with a client, when I move into the energy field of that client and become one with them, I experience what they're experiencing. And so I see what they see, and I start to believe what they believe to be true. And then out of nowhere, as we were talking, as I was doing the healing work, I was releasing the energy that was in her, that was tied to this problem that she had had her whole life. I literally could feel an energy being come in beside me. And I felt like I didn't want to look at that energy being. And then I noticed almost like a glass perspex wall. This was well before we all started using those walls between ourselves for COVID. And I felt this wall come up between us, and I had this sense of I'm not allowed to have physical connection with this being, but they need to be present. And then this being started speaking to me to speak to her, talking about how he was one of those beings and that he was also evolving just as humanity is evolving. All that is evolving, therefore everything within all that is evolving, including this being. He said to her that he apologized for what he'd done, that was just the way they did things. He was evolving beyond that now. Others of his race are not and will not. But he apologized to her and he released her from that chain that she still had around her neck. And so for me, being able to see that being, even though I didn't believe in that being, really, really turned my thoughts around what all that had taught me, that you experience, you see, everything that you believe to be true is true for you. And I experienced that with this client that day, releasing her from the slavery, I guess, of this reptilian being and letting her move away from that.
Rabi'a al-Adawiyya, a revered mystic born in Basra, was destined for greatness according to a divine dream that her father had on the night of her birth. Despite being forced into slavery as a teenager, her master granted her freedom when he saw a heavenly glow about her head during a prayer ritual. Rabi'a then embraced an austere life and became a spiritual mentor. Her teachings, centered on divine love, laid the foundation for Sufism. The followers of Sufism seek to please God by returning to their original state of purity, termed fitra. They do this through an inward search for God and by rejecting materialism. The Spanish mystic and Carmelite nun, Teresa of Avila, was renowned for her writings on mental prayer, which involved inner dialogues with God. She felt a divine calling from a young age and, as a teenager, clandestinely entered a convent against her noble family's wishes. Despite her fragile health and frequent fevers, Teresa experienced ecstatic trances, notably captured by the Italian sculptor Bernini. In one famous vision, she envisioned the soul as a vast crystal castle with 7 mansions, with God dwelling in the innermost chamber. This concept served as the foundation for her most popular work on contemplative prayer, The Interior Castle. Canonized as a saint, Teresa of Avila continues to inspire believers to embark on an introspective journey into the inner castles of their souls. Jean-Marie Bouvier de la Motte-Guillaume, a French writer and mystic, held childhood aspirations of becoming a nun, but was compelled into an arranged marriage at 15. Her husband did not share her religious devotion, prompting Madame Guyon to frequently escape at night to commune with God. Following her husband's death at 28, she fully embraced a life of mysticism. Her writings centered on nurturing the inner self through silent, contemplative prayer, a practice known as quietism. Her unconventional ideas were met with controversy and led to her imprisonment twice, including a stint in the Bastille. Undeterred, Madame Guyon continued her writings. Her books, particularly A Short and Easy Method of Prayer, left a lasting impact on 17th century Quakers and the modern mindfulness movement. Florence Nightingale, the mother of modern nursing, wrote in her diary on February 7, 1837, "God spoke to me and called me to his service." In a remarkable departure from the conventional expectations of a 19th century British upper-class woman, she embraced this calling and embarked upon a nursing career. Her memorable life journey included the training of nurses during the Crimean War and the introduction of medical practices that are now considered standard. Florence was not only an avid reader and writer on topics like public health and sanitation, but she also explored matters of spirituality and mysticism. She firmly believed in the harmonious coexistence of science and religion and the importance of aligning one's life with God's purpose. Edgar Cayce, a Christian mystic, gained renown for his mystical visions and dream interpretations. Hailing from Kentucky, Cayce began having mystical encounters in his youth. He believed he could converse with his late grandfather and acquire knowledge of a book's contents by sleeping on it. As an adult, he earned the moniker, the Sleeping Prophet, due to his ability to enter a trance and connect with a universal consciousness. In this altered state, he frequently provided health readings and analyzed dreams. Cayce viewed dreams as a means for the human spirit to attain higher levels of awareness. Notably, on January 1st, 1945, he predicted his own burial just 4 days later, and he indeed suffered a stroke shortly thereafter, with his funeral held on January 5th.
I absolutely, from day one of doing this work and having these experiences, I felt a real connection with Jane Roberts. And for those of you who don't know, in the 1960s, Jane was at the forefront, really, of channeling in that time. And she channeled an energy that was called Seth. And very early on in my journey, I found a group of channels who were willing to hold space because I was so unsure of myself, so unsure of what was happening, and a little bit frightened of it all. So I found a group of channels based in America, and they would get on the phone with me, the 3 of them, and 1 or 2 other channels that were learning how to do this. And they would hold space, really, for us to allow ourselves to open up, because it was all happening internally at this point. I hadn't yet allowed the voice to come out. And so they were holding space for that. And on one of those calls, they went around the circle and everyone did what they did to try and allow themselves to channel, and nobody could, so I didn't expect that I would be able to either. But when it came my turn, I found myself speaking in a entirely different voice. The words that were coming out of my mouth had a different sound to them. And one of the channels, one of the 3 channels that was holding space for me, said to me, "I think I know who you're channeling," and she named Seth. And at that moment in time that she named Seth, I got this rolling ripple of goosebumps in my entire body. I actually felt like I was going to throw up. But at the same time, it felt like this great joy, like there'd been a reconnection, like there was some recognition from the non-physical, and I'm actually experiencing it right now. Whew. And so I immediately felt that connection. I didn't know what Seth was. I didn't know about Jane Roberts at that time. And so, of course, I straight away went and had a look to see who that was. And I bumped up against a little thing about the Seth energy and Jane Roberts, in that it was said that no one would ever channel Seth again. Jane Roberts was the only channel for Seth. And so I did start using the name for a little while because I was trusting this psychic medium channel that had been holding space for me. And I still do feel the Seth energy when I'm channeling. It's still part of all that is. What I've come to understand is that everything that's being channeled and everything that's being experienced in the non-physical is a part of all that is. And so I do sometimes slip into a stream of channeling.
So I feel I have a connection with, and I definitely relate to Plato. From studying ancient Egypt and meeting people that have as well, they go right into Plato. It's really interesting. The cave story, I'd recommend anyone out there looking into that. When I hear that story, it's like I'm looking at my own life, trying to discover things and figure things out. And Plato was right onto it. Once again, there's a lot of good teachers, there's a lot of good people talking about these things. But yeah, the people in the beginning, the ancient philosophers, there's a lot of them out there that are incredible, but they all have basically the same message. We're coming from this amazing endless stream of information and content and all these things. It's there already. You just got to poke into them, tap into them, and then they will come out like a stream, like a volcano.
The journey of a spiritual development in our physical world often hinges for forging a connection with a metaphysical guide, be it a living mentor, a revered historical figure, or their enduring teachings. These connections serve as catalysts, propelling individuals towards greater understanding and personal growth. Our next contact experience explores the expansion of Judy Carroll's non-physical knowledge base thanks to a group of extraterrestrial great teachers.
In 1983, it was all set to open up for me. We were living on acreage at the time. I was married, and my husband's family were over for the day. They used to come over and give us a hand. We had animals on our acreage property. And during the middle of the afternoon, I started feeling a little bit off colour, like I was coming down with the flu. So I excused myself to go upstairs and lie down in the back bedroom. Now, I lay down on the bed, and again, I started getting this paralysis sensation that I hadn't had for quite a long time then, and this extraordinary roaring, buzzing sound in my head. The next thing that happened was I was aware of 3 of the rays standing in the room beside me. Now, this was in the middle of the afternoon, so it was full daylight, and they were so solid they were blocking out the light coming in from the window to the left side of my bed. And I was very aware of communication going on. I think they actually helped me to get up out of the body because I was aware of a 360-degree view around me, which is what happens when you leave the body. You don't just see in front of you, you can see right around. And we had a very, very long conversation. And one of the things they said to me was, it's time for you to stop hiding yourself away out here. You've got to get back to work. I was told that we would be moving from the country and coming back into the city because there was certain study courses that I had to undertake. This was when they told me that I needed to learn meditation, and they understood because being a professional dancer, I would have found it very, very hard to do this. I wasn't having much success with it. So this was when I was advised to take up Tai Chi. And they explained to me that it's like moving yoga, because I didn't even know what Tai Chi was. I didn't know what they were talking about. And they said to me, it's like moving yoga. And when I did finally move back to town, which did happen, an amazing number of so-called coincidences happened that caused us to move back to town. I found Tai Chi classes just around the corner. A woman moved next door who was taking part in a meditation group, and her teacher had just moved up from down south, so I was invited to join a closed meditation circle. And I was also, through the Tai Chi, I was also introduced to Reiki. So it took many years of study, but everything that the Greys told me at that time actually came to pass. And this was the beginning of my opening up. When I first saw them in the bedroom, every ounce of fear that I'd ever had just dissolved. I recognised them immediately as family. And the connection between us was just amazing. What I also came to remember, because it was a download of information was actually put into my mind. It was sort of like a walk-in experience, but what I understand is it was actually a higher part of my own being that stepped into my body. We have parts of our own being on every level of the human ladder, and it was obviously a higher part of my being that came into my body. I remembered afterwards that I'd actually had a meeting with my ET teacher a week before, and he'd actually asked permission of me if this was okay for them to go ahead, and was I still wanting more of this consciousness to be downloaded. So they did it with my full permission. They don't want to scare you, and as it happens, your consciousness just slowly opens up more and more, and you become increasingly aware of other dimensions around you. And I began to understand what they'd been talking about, and that this was my path in life, was to be a teacher. They told me, you'll be teaching these things one day. And of course I freaked out because I'd never done Tai Chi or anything like that. But now it's all correct. I'm teaching Tai Chi, I'm teaching Reiki, so everything they told me came to pass.
Meditation is a practice when you concentrate your mind on an object, thought, or activity to enhance focus, clarity, emotional calm, and to foster relaxation, concentration, and a heightened awareness. It has its roots in diverse metaphysical traditions and has been employed for millennia to explore the concept of consciousness. Regular practice of meditations can bring about a state of inner peace and calmness that affects all aspects of a person's life. Meditation forces links between left and right hemisphere of the brain, increasing communication between the logical and the intuitive aspect of ourselves. It slows down our heart rate and the brainwave activity, bringing about a deep, gentle form of relaxation and reducing mental stress and anxiety.
A lot of people think that meditation is about finding this perfectly peaceful space inside of you, and it needs to be perfectly perfect with no sound and, a centered mind. But the whole idea of meditation is about noticing what comes into your awareness, and then refocusing your attention back to, say, for example, the breath. The breath can be a very easy way to do it, but doesn't always work for everybody. So you can use aids like a candle or a mantra or even an audio to help center your focus and attention. Once you're there and you totally surrender, it's not unusual to actually dip into an altered state of consciousness, which basically means neurologically that the brain waves have started to slow right down and you get into what's called a theta state of brainwave. What that means is that your sense of self-consciousness starts to disappear. That ego self starts to take a back seat, and all of a sudden your awareness expands into something much bigger and vaster than you can imagine with your normal mode of thinking. And once you tap into that space, you start to connect with everything and everywhere, all in this present moment in time. It's a pretty special experience. It's not an experience that you need to chase or cling on to. It's just something that happens as a consequence of regular practice, where you start to transcend time and space and realize your true essence.
Meditation is extremely important because the effective meditation is to quieten and open the mind to more expanded conscious awareness, which is what I've been speaking about. So what the effect of it has is to enable us to reach into these higher levels of frequency. These different realms, such as the astral, physical, spiritual, whatever realm we're talking about, all vibrate at particular frequencies. And sometimes the frequencies are very far apart, sometimes they're not. What we need to remember is that everything is right here, right now. So if we want to be able to access the angelic realm, the astral realm, whatever, we need to have that expanded conscious awareness. And this is the reason why back in 1983, when I had my meeting with the Greys, I was told that I must learn to meditate, because they wanted me to speak out as their ambassador down here on planet Earth, which I'm doing very much now through my writing and through doing interviews such as this one. It's very important for those who wish to evolve spiritually to take part in some sort of spiritual practice, because this is the key to getting us into the astral realm and past it. I was actually advised to take up Tai Chi by the Greys during a meeting I had back in 1983 with them. And this was the best advice I was ever given, was to take up Tai Chi, and they also told me to take up a spiritual healing process of some sort, a natural healing modality. And I actually had to spend quite a few years studying these things. But my advice to everyone, if you want to open up to the astral, is take up a spiritual practice.
The way of, for me, inviting energy, my understanding of actually inviting energy or interdimensional beings into your life can happen in various ways, including meditation, drugs, a psychotic event, a spiritual awakening. Kundalini is another one, that something else is actually operating in your sphere. So whether it's good, whether it's bad, I'll let you know now. I am the worst person when it comes to discipline. I lack discipline. I can't meditate for the life of me. However, my actual experience happened spontaneously, so I wasn't actually in control. I think people believe that by meditating they can control the situation. I do have a story about when I did my one and only time I meditated after a yoga class, and that day I had challenged one of my lecturers in my studies at the time, paranormal experiences and parapsychology. And I did. I challenged my professor. And what was interesting was that night, while I was actually in this state of meditation, I think the portals are down, the portals are open, and other things can actually get in and operate. So he came in. My lecturer was actually in my sphere. And I'm lying there, and
I seriously had no control over that process. And as I turned my head, he turned with me. So no matter where I looked, he was in my face. And quite frankly, it was a warning. It was a warning for me just to back off, not challenge him. And actually, it was really quite a frightening experience because I realized that I actually let something in, and he eventually left, of course, but we never had the same kind of relationship again afterwards. And that happened because I was in a position where I allowed something to actually come in, operating on that level. But it can happen in quite a few different ways.
Imagine becoming a living bridge between heaven and earth. Middle pillar meditation, born from the mystical traditions of the Golden Dawn and Kabbalah, transforms you into a radiant column of divine light. This ancient practice doesn't just balance your spiritual energies, it ignites them, creating a luminous pathway that connects your earthly existence to cosmic consciousness. Let's examine this sacred journey step by step. Step 1. Become the sentinel. Stand tall, facing the rising sun in the east, feet united as one foundation. Step 2. Crown of light. Above your head, envision a brilliant white sphere spinning with divine energy. Let the sacred sound A-A-A resonate through your being. Step 3. The throat of truth. Voice the divine name Elohim and feel its power. Step 4. Heart of harmony. The light continues its descent, blooming into a spinning sun at your heart center. Speak Elohim with reverence. Step 5. Foundation of life. Light flows to your sacral center, creating a pulsing sphere of creative energy. Vibrate Shah, Dei El Chai, through your core. Step 6. Roots in earth. Finally, the divine light grounds itself at your feet in a spinning orb. Declare Ardu, Nei Eret to anchor your connection. Step 7. The lightning path. Feel the energy surge upward like liquid fire, from feet to spine to crown, then cascade back down in an endless electric circulation. Step 8. The sacred rhythm. Repeat this divine circulation 3, 6, or 9 times, each cycle deepening your transformation into a living pillar of light.
Sometimes people who start out to practice meditation have difficulties because their mind is very busy, they can't settle down into a quiet state because, let's face it, that's not what Western society is like. But there are many different forms of meditation. Meditation really is another word for altered state of consciousness. And you don't have to be quiet and still to enter an altered state of consciousness. You can meditate while you're gardening. You can meditate while you're listening to music. The point is moving into that different brainwave where you can access inspiration, where you can receive information from other realms. So for people who are struggling with meditation, I always suggest that they try moving meditation, like Tai Chi, or just even going for a quiet walk, a slow, quiet walk, in some place that is very green, because those surroundings help us into that altered state of consciousness.
Yeah, I definitely feel personally that this is part of my life's mission to be what I call a window between here and that astral realm. So the window opens and now boom, I'm able to see in that place and beyond, okay? I've also seen this with UFOs. UFOs are windows between here and another reality. I definitely 100% believe that. But me personally, I feel that I am a conduit or a vessel. And through meditation, all of these things are possible. It is as simple as that, but it is as important and specific of who you learn meditation from, who you train with. What are you doing? Are you just Googling things and trying to self-teach? Because that could be a mess too. You're going to be very careful what you're looking into, who's around, who's teaching you. Make sure you check out their credentials, because the stream, the endless flow I have, the teachers that I've had when I've made contact with the astral realm, I've also seen my teachers in that astral realm as well. And I've seen the beings that I've communicated with expressing their joy about me, training with, making contact with my teachers along the way.
So let me tell you what meditation is not. And meditation is not sitting on a mountain in a cross-legged position for 5 hours. Meditation can happen in micro moments, and it's a practice that has been employed by Buddhists, Christians, the Sufis, many, many ancient cultures. And it was a way and a means of connecting with an inner stillness, a calm, and also a connectedness to a realm much bigger and broader than who we think we are right now. So we can drop into states of extreme peace and serenity despite what's happening in our environments around us. So it's a way of connecting in and connecting out into realms beyond the physical form, realizing that we are so much more than this physical form.
Consciousness awareness expansion isn't limited to traditional meditation practices. While sitting quietly in lotus position is one approach, meditative states can be achieved through various activities. These include moving arts like Tai Chi and Qigong, as well as everyday actions such as walking or gardening. It's crucial to note that as one becomes more receptive to the astral realm, a diverse array of entities may potentially make contact. For this reason, seeking a guidance from an experienced teacher is advisable for those embarking on this journey of expanded consciousness. Meditation is said to lead to a state of physical and mental relaxation, and in this state, an individual can access the astral realm, as can be seen in our next contact experience when Anne Alexson is informed of her mission in life.
Early in my journey with all that is, in my connection with all that is, I was still not satisfied with where my life was going, and I would kind of lie in bed every night asking to see what my, why I was here, what my purpose was in being here on the planet. And I remember one morning waking up, having gone to bed asking that question, and I woke up and I sat to meditate, and I became aware that I was going to be taken on a journey and that I'd get a glimpse of what I was here to do. And so I got myself into the deepest state of meditation that I could do, and I felt all that is come in, and I felt myself surrounded by angels and other beings. And I then felt the insides of me, the inside of me, the energy aspect of me, I guess, leaving my body behind and going off. And within seconds, I was looking at a world that it was very obvious that it wasn't the world that we were currently living in. And I understood that I was looking at the future world, and that I was looking at a future world that was a peaceful world, a world in peace. There was no war. There was no human being on the planet that didn't have their basic needs under control, that wasn't fed, housed, health-wise looked after. And it was really exciting to me because, I think we're in such a troubled time in the world at the moment, with more wars and more disagreements and more division between everybody. And I was shown this world in peace, where everyone was in their highest self. Everyone was being their light being self, or their homo luminous self. And there was no need to fight. We all understood that we were one, that there was no separation between any one of us. We were all just simply different aspects of the same source. playing at being human beings. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just felt joy being in that world. My whole body was vibrating at the frequency of joy, happiness, and a real sense of calm and satisfaction, and also a sense of achievement. It was like all of those beings were celebrating that we'd finally got here. And then, within what seemed like seconds, I was back in my meditation pose on the wooden floor in my home. And I landed, and as I landed, I felt like there was words being typed into or tattooed into my chest. And those words were world peace through inner peace, one person at a time.
CE5 denotes a unique class of close encounters with extraterrestrials or their technology. The term close encounters refers to Dr. J. Allen Hynek's classification system for UFO and extraterrestrial experiences.
CE1, an unidentified flying object, that is, a UFO, is seen less than 150 meters away from a witness. CE2, a UFO event occurs that results in a physical effect on a witness. CE3, a UFO event occurs resulting in an encounter by the witness with an animated entity. CE4, a witness of a UFO is abducted. CE5, an abduction occurs that results in the death or permanent psychological injury of a witness.
Contactees assert that they engage in telepathy or non-verbal communication with extraterrestrial entities using their consciousness.
This contact concept emphasizes proactive, intentional contact, where humans initiate interaction through meditation, consciousness, and specific protocols.
I've had ongoing contact with the ETs known as the Greys since I was a very young child, and I'm very aware that there's a lot of negative information being put out about them. All I can say is my contact has been very, very positive all my life. Yes, I did suffer from fear as a child because they do look very different, but I realise now that I came in with that fear on purpose to be able to understand it from a human perspective, to be able to help others. Unfortunately, there is a group down here that I refer to as the controllers, who their whole idea is to keep humanity divided and in fear. And they're carrying out fake ET so-called abductions in which people are hurt and cause a lot of fear. And a lot of people who are having these experiences are being turned against the genuine ETs who are only here to help out. It's really important that people understand this, that there is an awful lot of disinformation being put out about the Greys.
In modern times, mainstream media, or perhaps some UFO researchers might be a better way of saying it, who feed the media, seeing extraterrestrial contact as negative, and it's being presented by the modern disclosure movement as in that way, as it being a problem. But it wasn't always like that. In the UFO community many years ago, we had the group of people called the contactees. This is from the 50s and 60s, even some through into the 70s. And they had positive experiences of being invited on board a spacecraft which has landed on planet Earth, and sometimes being taken for a ride, but certainly having interactions with extraterrestrials. Over time, that evolved into the late 60s and 70s, where we had the emergence of people like Betty and Barney Hill, who had experiences that created post-traumatic stress disorder and had them questioning their own sanity, and had a lot of UFO researchers questioning exactly what was going on with them. Then we had the emergence in a big way of alien abductees, and these are people who are taken against their will on board craft or to underground places, but certainly somewhere else, where they reported that they had these medical experiments done on them where samples of tissue would be taken from them, or even in some cases fetuses, and they were taken away. So people who were brought back after their experiences or returned to wherever they were taken from, the women would report that they had a missing fetus and basically there was no pregnancy. Men would report having sperm being taken from them as well. And this is what is the classic alien abduction experience, where people taken against their will. Today, that's not actually spoken of a lot as it was during the 1990s. In fact, they were the only types of experiences really that were reported to me personally and to other organisations. The classic contactee of positive experiences seemed to disappear into the annals of history. And then around 2000, these mixed motive cases started to appear where people were reporting abduction experiences and positive experiences. And in some cases, those people told me that these extraterrestrials, or who they thought were extraterrestrials, were following up after people had had an abduction experience to bring healing for them, to try and reverse, remove or heal what these abducting aliens had done to these witnesses. It's a very confusing time, but it happened. And it happened constantly all over the planet for 10 long years in a way that was very high numbers, off the chart, actually. So there are good reasons to think that some extraterrestrials may be harmful to humanity, may have an agenda that we don't like. And there are good reasons to think that there are some have a positive agenda, but we don't know because they're not really telling us. We're only guessing. And as a UFO researcher, we need to remain objective and just present what the witnesses are telling us, and be careful how we draw conclusions from their reports, separating what they report from their personal interpretation or from the collective interpretation from the UFO community.
Let's talk about the Wandjina, for example. The Wandjina tribe from Western Australia left a legacy of paintings, rock paintings that are over 4,000 years old. And in these paintings, you can see what looks like modern depictions of the greys. They've got big eyes, they've got rather large heads. However, they have no mouths. So for me, this is really quite compelling because no mouths mean that they were not able to talk. So the communication happened somewhere. Was it telepathic? Who could say? But for me, that's really, really compelling documentation of something really important that happened. The other example I'd like to use is the Dogon people from Mali in West Africa. They had intimate knowledge of the cosmos and planets in the 1920s when anthropologists went in. They recorded, again, song, dance, ritual, and they were able to communicate something really important, which was an intimate knowledge of the planets. And none of this was actually validated until probably the onset of technology 50 years later. So how did this tribe know about the cosmos and things that could not be seen with the naked eye? They themselves talk about these beings coming and giving them this information. So who were these beings? Clearly, they say they come from the sky. So for me, that is documented evidence that there has been contact along the way in the past.
Skywatch participants frequently describe seeing unusual lights or UFOs during CE5 encounters, which they interpret as signs of extraterrestrial spacecraft. They believe their thoughts, intentions, and meditations convey messages of peace and cooperation to potential extraterrestrial observers or visitors to Earth. A good example of these phenomena being the psychic firefighter Andrew Rodzovich, 1999, contact experience which he shared with these fellow US Coast Guards.
Doing this for just about 2 decades, I can tell you, wow, there is something to this. And to get into that, in 1999, I had an amazing experience. My first UAP sighting in the U.S. Coast Guard. I was stationed on the Coast Guard Cutter Durable in St. Petersburg, Florida. I was the lone night watchman on a 210-foot boat with 70 men, 2 women. I had the night watch from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. I'm scanning the perimeter every 10 minutes with these big binoculars, and then these gigantic regular binoculars, and then night vision goggles, military grade, probably first or second generation at this point. And I'm scanning every 10 minutes, looking around, looking up for anything moving, anything. So just out and up to the left, I could see something moving. I see these 2 round balls gliding. I'm thinking they're just satellites or they're explainable or it's something. So I call down to the bridge where the officers are and the radar man is, and the radar man says there's nothing on the radar. So the officer comes up. Next thing I know, there's 20 of us looking at these 2 balls in the sky. And one is just in front of the other one and they're gliding. One's just staggered behind the other one. They're moving like that. I'm watching them. And then about 10 minutes later, the 2 of them come together. And when they come together, they merge into one and they're just gone. No trace, no trail, no sound, nothing. Gliding, we're all watching this, 20 sailors. They come together, merge as one, gone. Now, the next morning, okay, I was rattled. I was rocked. I was like, what was that? I wasn't debriefed. I wasn't told, don't share this. That's why I am. I'm under no NDA or anything with that. I saw what I saw. I know what I saw. And at that moment, I just thought, wow, that's just something I'm seeing. I'm in the right place at the right time. I had no idea that I would find out 2 years later in 2001, Dr. Stephen Greer had the Disclosure Project where he had all these ex-military witnesses that were responsible for covering up the UFO reality. And I thought that was fascinating. I said, I need to meet this guy and these people he knows. So in 2011, 10 years later, I could finally afford to fly out to the desert to California to meet Dr. Greer. And I met some ex-military witnesses, some people that were in the service, were involved with the cover-up, and were experiencing and interacting with UFOs, ETs, the occupants on board. And it was put everything together for me. Like, oh my God, I knew this, I felt this. This is this giant big picture going on. It's actually been happening forever in my life, but I thought it was just isolated to that one incident in the Coast Guard initially.
Well, over the last 10 years, there's been a total rebranding of the whole UFO phenomena to UAPs, and that's because they're all linked with a militaristic craft. So by rebranding, they've been able to control the narrative of people's experiences and brand them under just small things. So tic-tacs are what you should now be expecting to see, the triangles, etc. Of course, most of this, if not all of that, is military, and that's why they've rebranded to UAP. So obviously, I've never doubted my own experiences. They're very personal to myself. There's one thing I do want to say is that even though I'm going to tell you about all these things that have happened to me, there's no proof or evidence that they're necessarily extraterrestrial, as in coming from a different planet. I still haven't had any evidence of that. So I've had experiences with these creatures which we're not expecting to see that are on this earth, but they could be living in a different dimension, perhaps. They could be spiritual. They could be living under the earth. They could just manifest at certain times. So I haven't found definitive proof that they're necessarily extraterrestrial per se. And that is, again, a holy grail that we would love to be able to do, to prove that something did come from Mars and it seeded the Earth or whatever, and it wasn't just from a meteorite. It wasn't panspermia.
Skepticism about the UFO subject is falling away very quickly today. In years gone by, I have been had doors slammed in my face. I've been invited to go and speak to social groups, library groups, community groups about the subject. Probably the worst grilling I got was from school children when I was invited into a primary school to talk about the subject. And it was obvious that those children were parroting their parents' beliefs. So in the past, there was a lot of ridicule about the subject. And the way I dealt with it really was just to tell people to do their homework, because I can't do their homework for them. If they really want to know those answers, they've got to go looking for the information that will provide answers for them. It's not always easy, but definitely the ridicule factor has really dropped away significantly now, particularly with the military witnesses that have come forward. Unfortunately, we need people of credible backgrounds to tell us what's real and what isn't, apparently. But that's the way it goes. So for now, I think it's great that there is not a lot of skepticism. In fact, but in the past, I had my own experience, and I was skeptical of its reality for 15 years. I told myself it was a hallucination for 15 years. And that wasn't easy to navigate at all. So I understand how people doubt their own experiences, and because it's a big pill to swallow. It's horrible tasting medicine, and we don't always like to take medicine, but it served a role which continued me on the path that I'm on, which as a UFO researcher, it's about the journey, really.
The idea of life on other planets and all these things and having some sort of influence on the human race, if we go back a little bit in time, I just use a little bit of logic here, just good old-fashioned country logic. In the very first book of the Bible, God said he made the stars, the heavens, the earth. In fact, he made the whole galaxy. But he made these things for a sign to the people on the earth. If we have to understand that these other planets have life on them, then there's no longer a sign for the people on earth. There's actually other life forms elsewhere. Now, he doesn't talk in those terms. That's problem number one, and maybe there are ways to explain around that, but then there's problem number two. If there's life on other planets, who's their saviour? How are they going to get where how are they dying? Are they living? Are they eternal beings? There's a whole lot of questions. The bottom line is they would need their own Jesus Christ, who then would need to die and be risen, and we end up with this sort of loop within a loop where it just doesn't work spiritually, because God made a creation. Planet Earth is for humanity, not for the rest of the universe. The universe is a sign, and even a bit more than that, one of the prophecies talks about the heavens, meaning everything above the earth. When the Lord returns, the Bible says it's all going to roll up like a scroll, meaning that it's all like a backdrop to the purpose of creation. So if there is life on these other planets, should they theoretically be able to exist, what happens to them when it all gets rolled up like a scroll? Because he's not rolling the earth up. He talks about the earth being here where Jesus will rule and reign on the earth. Now, let's say Planet X is out there somewhere in some star system far away. Where's Jesus going to rule for them? How are they going to enjoy the benefits of God, the creation, the knowledge of God, the life that they've got, and the creation that's around them? It just doesn't fit with Bible prophecy, but then we get people who swear black and blue that they've had this interceding with person and whatever. Well, my problem isn't to answer how or why that happened. My problem is God said there's no other gods outside of him. And rather than try and answer some of the things which are unanswerable with our common knowledge, I'd rather believe what God says about these things, and I don't have to worry about them. And If I encounter a Martian, I'll be greatly surprised, to be honest.
Some ufology researchers argue that there is a deliberate effort to instill fear concerning extraterrestrial contact, aiming to discourage any interest by the public in this topic. On the other hand, there are those who contend that any existing fear surrounding this subject is simply a natural reaction to encountering the unknown, rather than the result of a planned agenda. Several ufology incidents and sightings are regarded as credible owing to a combination of factors. For example, incident corroboration by multiple reliable witnesses, verification through radar data, the presence of tangible physical evidence, and the occurrence of formal investigation by official bodies, for example, the 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident. However, even when the above criteria are met, some experiencers still deny what has happened.
The ETs have been around on this planet forever. And in fact, human life is always bioengineered. It doesn't evolve naturally. We can evolve up to a certain point, but when the human factor comes in, ETs have to be involved in this process of evolvement. There are certain ETs, very highly evolved ones, who are known as creator beings. And they have actually there's been a number of these races on Earth since the planet was created. There's a very, very ancient race of greys. I refer to them as the ant people, who were one of the first physical races to be created or bioengineered down here by higher insectoid mantoid species. And the ant people were very close in connection. They worked very closely in connection with the nature spirits to set up environments and ecosystems on Earth. So definitely there's been a lot of different ancient alien species down here, and they were the ones responsible for actually creating Earth's plane humanity that we know today as modern man.
There are many types of people who report close encounters. They can be teachers, solicitors, bus drivers, mechanics. It's a wide array of types of people who do. What I've found over the years, though, is that people who do report close encounters are often very creative people. They're often spiritually engaged. There's a tendency towards vegetarianism or veganism. They might do things like paint or perform or sing or dance, make documentaries, write screenplays for movies, all sorts of things. And I find that fascinating because it seems to indicate that they're using their creative processes more so than the general population. And that may be why they have close encounters ultimately, because there may be that those types of people are more easy to contact than more left-brain people. If extraterrestrials want to get a message across to people, if they want to have telepathic communication, then maybe it's people who are more creative, that they can be more easily accessed. The other thing is people tend to be in the healing fields, whether they are mainstream healing or alternative healing. But it's more dominant that if they are in mainstream healing, that they will tend to want to move into alternative therapies. Now, what does that mean? Why do people choose alternative means of earning a living to mainstream people after they've had experiences? Something in them changes. And to this day, I still haven't quite figured that out. But it certainly had something to do with the creative aspects of their psyche.
Is there a connection between heightened left brain activity and the likelihood of becoming a contactee? As a more developed creative capacity increases one's susceptibility to encounters between beings from the astral or extraterrestrial realms. Interestingly, many abductees and contactees report undergoing lifestyle changes following their close encounters. These alterations range from subtle shifts to dramatic transformations in their way of life. Out-of-body experiences, or an OBE, are a phenomenon linked to altered state of consciousness. An OBE is usually a part of a greater experience, for example, near-death experience, a lucid dreaming episode, or an astral projection or soul travel journey. During an OBE, an individual feels their consciousness has left their body to observe the world from an external perspective.
Lucid dreaming is a state where the dreamer realizes they are in a dream as it happens. Within a lucid dream, the dreamer can actively shape and control the dream's elements, characters, and storyline. These dreams take place during the rapid eye movement or REM sleep phase and are a natural part of the sleep cycle. This practice enables individuals to navigate and engage with the dream world and its beings, while being fully aware of their dream state. Soul travel, also known as astral projection, involves intentionally separating one's consciousness and astral body from the physical body to explore other dimensions. Its purpose is the spiritual growth of the practitioner, and is linked to esoteric and metaphysical beliefs.
So OBEs can be initiated in many different ways. A good way is doing some sort of meditation, like a middle pillar meditation, something like that. Depends on what type of experience you're wanting to have, whether it's in where you're going in the astral realm, what you're trying to achieve. In that experience of the time slip, it was literally just stepping over that threshold that actually transformed me into this other state. Where I was lucid, I was obviously standing up, I was there at that place, but they couldn't see me. I've done a lot of experiments over the years with people on my radio show, The Witching Hour on 4ZZZ, where I've actually got people to, I've sent dreams to the audience that night and then for a sequence of every night for the week, and got people to tell me about their dreams, people who want to participate, and I've had a really high hit rate. And I've chosen things that have been so obscure that they would not, and in particular, and written them down that they would not be able to do that. I managed to do, over a period of a few years, gather a few people who kept getting hits after time. So I don't know who these people are. I don't know where they are. There's a massive range of people who can be listening in a big geographical area, and yet they're still picking up on that experience. So they're in that Yetziratic realm, they're in that astral realm, and they're managing to tune in to whatever frequency or whatever it is that I'm sending out, and they're having those experiences. And I actually managed to meet my partner through doing this dream sharing. He seemed to just keep picking up things. I didn't know who he was at all. He was just a listener, and yet I was sending him dreams, and then he started sending me dreams, and this was just on a nightly basis now, so it was really specific dreams, and I was having them each time I was having these dreams, and so was he. And we did it so scientifically, so you would write down your dream, the time that you had it, etc. And remember, you're sending these dreams before you go to sleep, so it's not at the same time that they're asleep, and yet it goes into this area of manifestation and then comes back again. So you've sent out the intention and it's come back again to these people who've wanted to receive that intention, and they've actually had these dreams. So it's active, and that's how you can, where they say, dream big, think big, and you can manifest whatever it is you want in like popular culture. And that's by sending out that intention to this astral realm. And then that's where the purpose of creation is, manifestation is, comes back into formation, it's called, and then it comes back to be manifested. Above that is the Briatic realm, where you have the creation. And of course, beyond that is the God realm. So, so there's something about that you can actually have intent and allow people to have that experience. And as I say, statistically, I had so many more people who actually, it was probably at least a 50% strike rate. And I'm talking about really strange experiences, like saying you were standing on a bridge and you would see dolphins going under a really high chasm swimming by. I had somebody describe that as being standing on a bridge and seeing naked women and those sorts of things. Now, this is really specific. Might not be exactly the intention, but very, very similar. So there's definitely something to it. And in the magical realm, the realm of the esoteric, that's what's used. That's the area of formation for creating your intent.
Soul travel in a shamanic understanding is the art of shamanic journeying. And when we go on a journey, we are accessing other realms, whether it's the upper realm, the lower realm, or the middle realm, depending on what it is that we're trying to find or know. It may be for healing, it may be for information that we need to help us do something. It may be to go into past lives or future lives or to find lost things. It may be to access our ancestors and ask them questions, whether it's of a personal nature or something for a larger group of people.
We all astrally project when we sleep. At some stage normally just before dawn, our astral bodies detach themselves from the physical. It seems we all need to do this for physical, mental, and spiritual rejuvenation. Often people will experience something just below their conscious level of awareness. There will often be an experience that resonates with the principal vibrations embedded within that person's field. They may come back with a shock or a sudden falling sensation. Sleep paralysis is a classic example of a sudden experience in the astral that forces the body to awake before the essential energies of the astral body have fully integrated with the physical body. True art of astral projection is to be able to consciously navigate these states, initiating profound spiritual transformation in the process. When you leave your body consciously, you actually experience the movement of this inner body. Your mind becomes razor sharp as you tune into higher vibrational realms of awareness.
Out-of-body experiences can manifest in various circumstances. During sleep as lucid dreams, through intentional astral projection practices, or amid traumatic events such as near-death experiences. As Greg Doyle previously noted, the body instinctively seeks rejuvenation, be it spiritual, physical, or mental. In essence, it has an innate ability to call for assistance when needed from a non-physical realm. Out-of-body experiences commonly feature a feeling of weightless movement or hovering, distinct from one's physical form. In an unusual twist on this astral phenomenon, Cheryl Gottschall, ufology and paranormal researcher, found her consciousness transposed into the form of a nearby animal, a rare outcome in the realm of metaphysical pursuits.
Many years ago, I was sitting on the front veranda of my house, My daughter, who was about 4 or 5 at the time, was playing in the yard. And it was a beautiful day. I had a lovely outlook watching her in the garden. And the sky was blue, there were no clouds. And I was very relaxed, extremely relaxed actually, and just enjoying watching her. And I looked up onto the power pole that was outside my adjacent neighbour's property, and there was a bird up there. The next thing I know, I was in the bird. I was looking at myself on my front veranda, watching my daughter, looking through the bird's eyes. And I thought, wait, what? What's going on? I could see clearly as if I'm looking at, in my ordinary reality. I could see the top of the roof of my home. I could see the trees behind it. I could hear traffic. It was the same blue sky and sunny day, watching my daughter play in the front yard. The strange thing was I had no connection to my physical body. My physical body was doing what it would normally do, but my consciousness had completely separated from my physical body. And I'm looking through the bird's eyes. I didn't feel like a bird, but I was using the bird's eyes to look at the scene below. The next thing I know, my mind kicked in and went, what on earth is going on? And bang, I'm back in my body. And I just really didn't know what that was all about, but it was the most profound out-of-body experience that I've had. I've had other small experience where I was driving in my street towards my home and I was suddenly behind myself while I was driving in the car, and then immediately I was back in my body. So fortunately there was no car accident, but this other one where I was looking through the bird's eyes was confounding, if nothing else.
Giovanna Slodge's next contact experience illustrates how lucid dreaming can be considered a potential portal to the astral realm and the various other non-physical dimensions.
My story and how this all came about, how I'm on this journey, happened 17 years ago. I can't believe that it's actually that long ago. However, I'll share with you what actually happened. And I met a woman up at my kids' school, and she was 4 months pregnant at the time. And we became steadfast friends, so much so that when it came time for her to go to the hospital to have the baby, she actually asked if I could look after her 2 children. So they were dropped off nice and early in the morning, and it was a hot day. The children were playing in the pool with my children, so there was a lot of noise and laughter. And every time I went to check on the children, I became aware on the right-hand side, on the roof of my neighbour, there was 3 crows that sat there. Initially, I didn't think too much about it. I didn't really know about, birds sending messages, and it wasn't until much, much later that it all connected, everything connected. So to say that the birds were sitting there all day was not an understatement. They were actually still there in the evening. They didn't move, they didn't flinch. Those 3 crows, they were actually 3 crows that sat on that roofline. Every time I saw them, I became more and more alarmed and felt instinctively that something had gone wrong with the birth, something was wrong with the baby. And so when I finally got that phone call 9 o'clock that night to say the husband was going to come and pick up the children, there was a beautiful little girl that was born. She did present with complications, but they felt that in time they were going to be able to fix the issue. She had a low heart rate due to a hole in her heart, but for all intents and purposes, everything seemed to be okay. 2 weeks later, our friends joined us. Their brand new baby. Mum was sitting on the balcony. Everybody was sitting on the balcony. And I was bringing some meat out to the barbecue. And when I looked up, I spotted the 3 crows. And they formed a crown on her head. And I knew from where she was sitting and from the angle that I could see her, I knew that something was dreadfully wrong with the baby. I knew that that baby was going to die. And it felt like, it's almost like because I had preempted it, it manifested because of what I was thinking. And I remember just running inside and dropping the meat and my husband coming in and trying to figure out what was going on. And I said, something's wrong with the baby. She's going to die. She's going to die. And, you know, he thought I was mad. I didn't say anything to anybody else, but he thought I was going mad. Fast forward 3 months and something was incredibly wrong with the baby. She was so sick. She didn't thrive. She didn't, you know, her skin was actually hanging off her bones. They had no idea what was wrong with her. And so consequently, when they eventually raced her to the hospital, they found what's called a vein of Galen. Now, this is so rare. This happens like 1 in 10 million people, where there are like little hemorrhages on the back of the cortex of the brain. And normally what happens is when a baby presents with a vein of Galen, they die within the first 10 to 15 seconds because the blood pressure raises and it just hemorrhages the brain within literally, you know, seconds. But because this young child had a hole in her heart, it just slowed the whole process down. So she was rushed to emergency where they tried to do invasive surgery. We won't go into that at the moment, but I was left thinking that it was my fault. Unbelievable, just my fault. And I just remember going to bed, screaming in my head, is she going to live? Is she going to die? Is she going to live? Is she going to die? And then through that extreme grief, I just remember hearing a voice, and the voice said, search your heart, she's going to die. And I look around and I'm not actually in my bed anymore the way that I thought, well, where I thought I was supposed to be. I'm now standing in a basement car park and I can see a roller door in front of me, I can see an elevator, and the voice had actually come from behind the elevator in that dark section. And I was never frightened. Let's just make that very clear. I was never frightened because I was too angry. I was just too angry. And I actually physically ran to this area in the darkness and screamed all these obscenities and said, you know, why does a baby have to die? I don't understand why in God's name does a baby have to die? And he said, she brings the lessons to be learned. And, you know, that means nothing. That actually means nothing to me. It didn't alleviate the grief. It didn't do anything. I just remember screaming, and I eventually was able to just breathe and calm down. And so consequently, I asked the darkness, who are you and what do you want? Because I don't understand what's going on here. And out of the shadows came an elderly gentleman. He peered out from the shadows and he had his arms outstretched. He was wearing chainmail, wearing what's called a tabard, which is a mantle that sits over the chainmail with a crest. And it was blue, like a royal blue with a big gold cross. And he said, my name's Willem. You can imagine my surprise. I thought, oh, my knight in shining armour, have a look at him. He's old. He's obviously in a position where, you know, this is not very good. This is not a good place to be. And then he stepped back into the shadows and I said, where are you from, Willem? And he said, well, numbers came tumbling out of the dark, and it was 12:48. And I said, what do you want? What is it that you want? And he said, I want atonement. And I didn't even know what atonement meant. As I said, in my grief and in my pain, I just didn't really process. Clearly I fell asleep, and the next morning I woke up and realised this is not a dream, because it's clear. It was a clear conversation. My dreams may be a little bit jumbled and there's more symbolism than anything, but this was an actual conversation. I spoke to my husband and he believed that I was telling my truth. And so consequently, 2-3 days later, she died. The little baby died.
Adept astral projection teachers like our next presenter, Greg Doyle, offer guided meditation and visualization sessions aimed at helping individuals access the astral realm, providing a structured approach to astral exploration through soul travel, lucid dreaming, and other related disciplines.
It was March 1999 when I had my first experience in the astral. I woke up suddenly in the early hours of the morning to find a bright white light entering my forehead and waking up my mind. And it was quite bizarre. It was like a pulsating white light, and I was fully conscious and knew that my body was asleep. And then what happened was it seemed to flow into my heart, and really with this very loving feeling in my heart, so I wasn't afraid. And then also there were these triangles of light that seemed to come together behind my eyelids. These all came into this circle of light that got stronger and stronger. And then before I knew it, it was the feeling of a question being asked non-verbally. It was the feeling of, do you want to come with me? And I thought, yep, let's go. Next thing I know, I was going down this tunnel, and I'd never heard the expression wormhole, but later on I was to hear about that kind of stuff. I go down this tunnel, a lot of wind in my ears as I'm moving, and it's often called the astral wind. At the end of this tunnel, I'm in this very clear atmosphere of, it's like a desert planet. There's all these towers and very, very ultra modern buildings, like very tall structures with disc-shaped buildings on top, and they had lights, and it looked very high-tech and very non-earthly. And I was just so fascinated because it was ultra-real, ultra-realistic, and it was not Earth. And I remember viewing this scene from this perspective and knowing that somehow there are others. That was the feeling that was given to me, that there are others that exist, even though this wasn't a question I'd been wrestling with. And it also felt like home, which was the bizarre thing. It had a feeling of home. I remember coming back from the experience, waking in my physical body after it, with these tears of ecstasy, thinking, what on earth was that?
In December 2017, the Pew Research Center compiled the Religious Typology Survey of 4,699 US adults. Part of the survey dealt with metaphysical beliefs and practices. An unexpected 41% of those interviewed expressed their belief in the abilities of psychics. More surprising was the fact that the percentage was higher with those who practiced a mainstream religion, a staggering 87% of the 41%.
Like most things to do with the spiritual realm, there's an incredible degree of complexity here. One of the things about the idea of the psychic is that it meets our need for certainty and assurance. And so I think for a lot of people, that's what's going on when they talk about psychics. At the same time, there are people who I think are in touch with the divine realm in a way that gives them capacity to see in a way that others can't. And I think that's also true of prophets. So I think one of the complexities we do face when we're dealing with spirituality is in the mix there is superstition as well as actual encounter. And I think the psychics are particularly one of the places, or the idea of the psychic is one of the places where all of that starts to get mushed in together. And so there's real experience of people seeing clearly something that others can't see. mixed in with superstition, hoping things will be okay, and also our fear of not knowing.
People who like to believe in God, they're looking for God. They trust that the religion or the denomination they go to will supply the answers. For a lot of people, it's their life, it's their family, it's their way of life, it's the people they've grown up with, so they have a trust at every level with these people and they expect answers. However, that's not the best way to get truth. The best way to get truth is to go to the Bible. The best way to get truth equally is to go to people who preach the Bible clearly, based on experience, who aren't too dogmatic on too many things, but actually will nail down what God has said. So the fact that these people are looking for answers elsewhere would tell me that their church isn't actually meeting the needs they should be meeting, that the true spiritual experiences that they should be getting from God aren't being had, so they're going elsewhere to find their spiritual pleasure, and it doesn't work. So I would expect as time passes, even more nominal Christians will become interested in seances and the alternate beliefs, simply because their churches are failing even more so to stand on true Christian values, especially on miracles, blessings, and the void being left will have people following any other belief.
Could psychics be considered contemporary prophets, possessing a keener ability to interpret the signs of our time? Is the growing interest in psychics, mediums, ufology groups, and various metaphysical practices such as vision quests, meditations, soul travel, and lucid dreaming indicative of a spiritual vacuum in modern life? Perhaps these pursuits serve as pathways leading humanity towards contact with the entities residing in the astral realm. You tell me.
The astral realm is where we go when we pass over at the point of death. And the most important thing to understand about the astral realm, and in fact this applies everywhere, but particularly in the astral, we create our own reality through our mind focus and our thought patterns. So if, for example, we pass over from this life believing absolutely nothing about anything, that it's all a load of rubbish, then we're going to find ourselves on the other side in a black void. What's going to happen then, it's eventually going to occur to us, hey, I'm in a black void, but I'm still conscious. We're going to be aware of the fact that we're still conscious. And this is the very, very important thing to understand about the astral realm. We create our own astral realm as part of human consciousness. But that doesn't take away from its reality.
So you can access the astral realm, anybody can. The best way of doing it is through meditation. So you can consciously access this place wherever it is, and you can do things like travel, you can go and visit places, you can have experiences, you can meet angels, whatever it is that you want to do. And you're lucid and you're not asleep, and it's something that you definitely want to try doing. It's the Yetziratic realm, it's the angelic realm, and it's the place of formation. So whatever it is that you want, you have to go visit there first before it will manifest here, and that's what all magical practitioners, people who work in the esoteric know. So that's what you've got to do. So go out there and enjoy.
The most important thing with this astral realm that I could pass on to you if you're watching this, the most important thing about this astral realm, okay, is that the ETs mean zero harm. Do not buy into that false flag narrative, okay? By going outside and making contact, anyone can do this. It's not for everyone, but it is for anyone that wants to do it. Give it a try, give it a shot. If you're open to this, you want to do it, and you will be amazed. I have done this with hundreds of people all over the globe. You can get a CE5 out and hit, boom, location. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. You reach out to the others. I say find your tribe.
I think if you should find yourself in the astral realm, take notice of what you see as best you can. Be observant. If you feel the need, protect yourself And if these things happen to me again, I want to stay there longer. So make the most of it, but don't take it lightly.
With the one views the astral realm as a metaphysical dimension of higher consciousness, our symbolic landscape of the soul's journey, one thing is clear. The idea has captivated human societies across all ages. From ancient vision quest to modern-day soul travel, we have an enduring drive to transcend our physical limits and perceive greater cosmic truths.